I think the authoritarian states of the Eastern Bloc were among its first victims were always anti-authoritarian socialists, democratic socialists, and so on. But parties with the same roots in Marxism also took power across much of Western Europe. And if you want an example of an attempt to construct an alternative political economy within the sphere of capitalism, but pushed by anti-capitalist forces, you should, in fact, look at Sweden and look at the Nordic model and look at that transformation through uninterrupted rule. 50 years, from the 1930s to the 1970s, a socialist party was elected in Sweden. What happened when they lost? There was a peaceful transference of power in 1976, and they were reelected in 1982. But even in those cases, we use political coercion because, in fact, there needs to be forms of coercion. The question is, what kind of coercion? I am more than happy to take away someone's right as a capitalist to do whatever they want, certain aspects of their right to do whatever they want, but I'm not happy to take away any of their individual rights as a human being, their right to basic speech and other freedoms and so on. The question, in other words, is freedom for whom?
Capitalism is not anti-democratic. In fact, democracy and capitalism go together. They go together. Where do you think democracy came from? It's come up through capitalism. What's strong? Any country that has high degrees of economic freedom also have high degrees of personal freedom. They also have democracies. These things tend to go together. And once socialism gains power, democracy begins to disappear over time. First, you lose your. Bhaskar said that he believes in sort of civic rights, but maybe not economic rights. But when you begin to take away economic rights, civic rights will follow eventually. When power gets concentrated, that's what happens.
You go ahead and
sure. I just wanted to again come back to the statement that I read earlier from a recent issue of Jacobin. Only when the private decisions that have massive public implications are subjected to popular control will we have a democratic society. If that's what you mean by a democratic society, if you mean any private decision that affects others is subject to popular control, I don't want a part of that, and I don't think that's a right understanding of democracy. I think instead, the right understanding of democracy is to let people make their own choices outside of a narrow political sphere, and capitalism offers that.
If you ever take a course in what democracy is, the first chapter of that course will tell you it's something we inherited from Athens many thousand years ago. Pericles, you remember from your civics class? Democracy was invented in those days, and we celebrated and has been studied ever since. That society was based, and the majority of people in it were slaves. The democracy only applied to the minority of the people who weren't slaves. There's no one-to-one relationship between democracy and capitalism. There never was. The mystique is to suggest that because we go through a voting procedure in politics, we should be blind to the exclusion of democracy where we work. And we depend more on the realities of our jobs than we do on those strange political animals who work in Washington. That's why the democracy is lacking, and that's why the problem is legitimately raised against capitalism, that it has excluded democracy from the beginning in its workplace.